I had a very hard time in my 20s because it's like you're coming out of this system that you were in for years, for 2 decades you were in a system. And then you graduate college and you come out of this system and now you're like, well, now what the fuck? Now what do I do? What's going on, friends? Welcome to a new vlog. I am so excited for this one. I can't wait to tell you about all the shit that I learned in my 20s that was absolutely life-changing. I mean, it genuinely changed the direction of my life, and that's why I wanted to make this video. This is not like some whatever, like what you learned in your 20s. No, this is like, if I didn't learn these things, I wouldn't be here today, and my life would have been totally different. But first, we're on our way to the gym, so I'm gonna go work out. Okay, now that Gino has talked me out of my imposter syndrome, because I'm like, why should anybody care? But honestly, these things like really changed my life. And like I said, like I would not be here if I hadn't learned those lessons. And I remember like just being so, just feeling like nothing made any sense to me until I learned these things. And then like life started to make sense to me. So anyway, lesson one, biggest lesson one is stop listening to your fucking friends. Holy shit. If I had known this earlier, it would have saved me so much heartache and just so much just so much drama and bullshit. Because when you're different, when you want to do something different with your life, when you want to grow, a lot of times, like 90% of the time, your friends are not going to understand what the fuck you're saying. They're not going to want you to grow. They're not going to want you to leave. They're not going to want you to be better, because then they have to face the reality that they're not changing. And I can't, like when I was working at Chrysler, and I was studying to get my personal training license, because I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here. Like I can't do this for the rest of my life. All my other friends were still working at corporate, different car companies, everybody was working at, and nobody understood what I was saying. Like it to them, it wasn't as big of a problem as it was to me. To me, I was dying every day I was going there. And it was very real. So I spent a lot of my time like studying and trying to get my license and everything. And I got a lot of hate for that. Like the weekends that I wouldn't want to go out, I wouldn't want to go drinking and partying and whatever the fuck bullshit they wanted to do, and I used to participate in, I no longer wanted to do. And I got so much hate for that. Like, you're lame. Like, what are you doing? What are you going to be a trainer? Like, what are you going to just quit your job and be a trainer? Like, what kind of life is that? Like, this is fun. This is funny. This is a joke. Like, nobody understood. So anyway, I think that that's a huge lesson that I learned in my 20s. And I wanted Gino to tell us the crap story at some point. But also, what is your take on it?
I think you should never take advice from people whose lives that you don't want. And if somebody's not living a life that you aspire to have, there's no fucking reason why you should take their advice. Because they don't know. Especially when someone's very close in age to you and they have very limited life experiences. What type of information am I going to get from you that's going to help my life significantly when you're experiencing problems that I don't have and I don't want? So it's like you really need to look at people objectively and ask, like, what sort of information can you contribute to my life? I'm not saying close yourself off to people, but I'm saying at the same time, if they have criticisms and judgments, they don't really even have any objective problems with what you're doing, right? It's more just their own subjective belief, right? It's their belief that it's the wrong decision. How do you know? How do they know? They don't know, right? So don't take advice from people that you don't want their life, because you're going to put yourself in a position. Another thing too is, people project their fears, onto you. They're like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Maybe that's what their parents told them when they were younger. Oh, you can't do these things. You have to do these things, right? They've been indoctrinated to believe that their life has to be made up of very specific choices. Like you need to make the choice to go to school, go to college, get a job, buy a house, start a family and retire someday, And maybe that's not the life you envision for yourself. So don't make your choices based on what other people's limiting beliefs and indoctrinated ways of living are. You know what I mean? So it's like, if they have their own take on life, let them have their own take on life. It doesn't mean you need to take their advice, though.
Can you tell us the crop story?
It's not really that big of a deal, but
Just explain the
No, I
idea.
mean, so there's like I heard a story a long time ago about this guy who went up to a pier and he seen a fisherman sitting on a dock with a white bucket next to him and he was crab fishing. So this guy was pulling crabs out and he was putting them in the buckets and the guy was noticing from a distance that one crab was starting to crawl off the top of the bucket, and he goes up to the fisherman and he says, "Hey, your crab's about to get out of the bucket." And he says, "Just leave him be. Don't worry. Watch what happens next." And then the other crabs start to pull him back into the bucket, right? So the one that was trying to get out, the one that was trying to escape its reality, right? The other crabs just pulled it back down. And that's what your friends can do at some point in your life. Well, people that you believe are your friends, right? They want to keep you where you are. Look, a real friend, I like to use this analogy too, is like, a friend puts you in your bed when you're drunk, right? But a best friend throws you down the stairs, right? Face the harsh realities of life. Somebody who really wants what's best for you is going to be very harsh in their judgments. Somebody who really wants what's best for you is going to be honest with you. They're going to challenge your belief systems, but they're not going to criticize you. They're not going to tell you that they think that this is the best option for you. They're going to challenge the way you think about it and ask you, well, why are you doing that? It's not so much a judgment as it is almost like an expansion, upon what you believe, right? So like explain to them why it is that you should be doing this. Those are what friends actually do, not judge and criticize you. So that's pretty much my take. I don't know.
Yes, that was good. Which brings me to my second point that's very similar to the first one is stop listening to your parents. Jesus Christ. Like, and this is not for kids. Obviously, this video is not made for kids. If you're watching this, you're in your 20s. And when you're in your 20s, you're no longer a kid. You do not listen to your parents when you're in your 20s. They don't know, your parents don't understand how the world is now. Like, they're, unless you want to have the exact same life that they have. Like, I don't know who your parents are. Maybe they have this incredible life that you want to have, but I know for me, I never wanted to have like a life like my parents. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't want to have a life like their parents, but then they'll continue to listen to what they want them to do. So I can't stress this point enough. Like, I see so many people, especially like immigrants, a lot of immigrant children, like they'll keep listening to their parents and live their life based off of their expectations. Look, there's going to be a point where like you have to take care of them. And then what? How are you going to take their advice then? Like, you need to start living your own life and making your own choices. And when I learned that, I like finally like gave myself permission to make my own choices and follow my dreams. My life changed, seriously. I would have been the same fucking miserable 9 to 5er if I wasn't able to overcome like this fear of, if I make my own decisions or if I do something that they don't expect, or it's not in line with their expectation, that like they're gonna hate me or I'm gonna die. Like, I don't even know why it was so scary, but it was really scary at some point. And I just want you to know that, like, seriously, like, it's not as bad as you think. It's actually liberating, and you'll be so much happier in the long run if you just like cut it. Like, just cut the shit. Here.
Well, here's the big issue with that is preservation of values is not a bad thing, right? Like if they're passing down a belief system to you that can actually help you in life, that's one thing. But a lot of times what they do is they project their fears onto you, right? Is that you shouldn't make these life choices. You should do this instead, because maybe they feel they've made a mistake in their life, or they're trying to live vicariously through you. Maybe they want you to live out the life that they wanted for themselves. And in that situation, you're going to put yourself into a place in your life where you're not going to want to be in, because it was no longer your choice to begin with. They made the decision for you. Like, hey, get this job and go to this school and do this and do that. And then now you're, 10 years later, after you're fucking finished with it, you're like, I actually hate my life and I don't like anything that I do. And you can't figure out why, because you had never trained yourself to think for yourself. Instead, you took on the opinions and the judgments and the rules of other people, and all their limiting beliefs that they projected onto you, and you have made them your own. And then that can make you very confused later in life, because it's not you. It's a system of beliefs that have been indoctrinated into you. And there's also something called the zeitgeist. Now, the zeitgeist is about the generational mood, okay, which means that you have more in common with people your age across the world in a different country than you have with people that are older than you in the same country. That's because people in different eras, right? People that are different ages, they have certain value systems. And this is actually something that the fashion industry and big tech study. You know, they know how to basically market these things to you because they know generationally you're going to have very specific value systems and traits. And you can study this, right? It's called the zeitgeist. So your parents aren't going to have the same value systems and beliefs and interests as you are. So if you're taking advice from them in all aspects and all realms of life, and you're allowing them to create a compass for you, you know, that is taking you further away from who you actually are, well, then you're going to wonder later in life why you hate your life and why things aren't the way you want them to be, because you've taken wrong turns one too many times because you've had somebody telling you to do it along the way, and it wasn't by choice. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. Okay. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna go work out. Then I'm gonna tell you the other lessons that I learned in my 20s. So I really wanted to make this glute and calf exercise short, sweet, and effective. So I was very intentional with the way I set it up. First of all, I did abductions and some body weight calf raises just to warm up my glutes and warm up my calves. And then I set up the circuit. The first exercise in it was hip thrusts, and because there's no glute day without hip thrust, so that had to be a staple in the workout. And I put that in a circuit with walking lunges. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to do another exercise that was single leg, not necessarily like a squat or an RDL, because I'm already doing a hip thrust that I'm using like both my legs. I wanted something single leg so I can really engage each glute separate. And lunges are one of my favorite exercises. The biggest thing is making sure your back knee is bending and going into kind of like a 90 degrees, like you're dropping the back knee is how I cue it. And that way you can get the most glute engagement. So it was hip thrusts, walking lunges, and the third exercise that I set up was seated calf raises. So this I did in a circuit, four to five sets. First set was kind of a warm-up, but then I did 4 working sets of heavier weight. And the reason I chose seated calf raises is because you guys know I've been trying to grow my calves, making them wider, and seated calf raises does exactly that, makes your calves look wider. That was a very short glute circuit that I did. I feel like my workouts keep getting shorter, but I'm just feeling more cardio, so whatever. I did a glute circuit, and then I just walked on the treadmill.
What do you got to say for yourself, huh? All right, go play in traffic.
All right, let's continue the list. There's no certain numbers. There's only a few more. Like I just thought about like what was really important to me, and that's what I wrote down. So the next one is reading books. The biggest thing that I realize is people, when they graduate from college, like when they're like, let's say 22, 23, 24, they literally stop educating themselves. And what's crazy to me is that my biggest education started after I graduated college. I can't even imagine like what I would be like if I hadn't read all the books that I read. I've read so many fucking books since I graduated, and it made the biggest difference in my life. Like think about like authors are so generous. That's what I wanted to say. Like they'll take something that took them their entire life to understand and learn, their life's work, and they put it into a cheap fucking book in a like a Spark Notes version of it for us to like read it. It would be crazy not to read that. You know what I mean? So anyway, don't stop educating yourself after college. Like read a lot of fucking books. Finance, spirituality is another thing. Health is another thing. What else? Sales, marketing, psychology. Yeah, so many things. Do you have something to add?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Look, I think a big part of intelligence is it's dynamic, right? Which means you don't read books for static facts. You read them for the facts, right? To like understand different points of view, but ultimately is to expand your knowledge base. And that way, when you go to take these facts, you interrelate them in the way that you communicate with people, right? It's like when you go to talk to somebody, like what references do you have? Like where are you pulling information from? right? And if you're very narrow in what you know, well, then you're gonna carry a very dull conversation. So I think not only just for the facts of learning things, but also for the way that you communicate with people moving forward in your life. Because communication is how, in my opinion, is how you elevate yourself. Like if you can't communicate for shit, you're not going to be around any very impressive people in your life, right? Like think about,
Stop playing with
I
them.
can't help it. He's going to bark at me. But think about people that are like lower in terms of socioeconomics, right? Like maybe they don't have a lot of money. Generally speaking, their conversations are very simple, right? They talk about very simple things. So the more you read, the more you educate yourself, you get around like the people who educate themselves, right? One thing that I really like that I learned is learning where the word scholar came from. Scholar is actually Latin, for the word leisure, because back in the day, you weren't reading books unless you were rich. Because it was a leisurely activity. People couldn't afford to read books because they had to fucking spend all day working. So it's a leisure to learn things, but also it's a necessity in some ways because expansion of knowledge is really what makes you a different person, right? I mean, like if you go through life like a narrow hallway, right, and you only know what you were taught in school, right, or at your job, or just from the certain friend group that you stick around, well, then you're going to limit your possibilities in life, because really it comes down to expanding your mind into different domains, like learning things that you wouldn't otherwise came in contact with in your life. And that's what books can do for you. Like she was mentioning, like somebody spends their entire life researching, trying to understand something, or they paint it in an artistic view, and it just helps expand the way that you think. So reading books isn't about information. It's about information comprehension, and it's about dynamic intelligence. So it's about like being able to source all this from different, your way you communicate through different sources of information.
Yes. I do have to cut Gino off because he'll talk for the next hour, and I don't want this video to be an hour long.
I'm saying a whole lot of nothing.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay, next lesson. What is this, number 4? Very important, at least for me. If you're like me, this is going to be super important for you. Question everything. Ask why. Most importantly, question your feelings. That's something, like, just growing up, I never asked myself that question because, if anything, I was always told not to consider my feelings. My feelings didn't matter. Whether or not I liked something didn't matter. I had to do it. So I trained myself to do a lot of things because I should, never thinking, well, do I even like doing this? Or thinking like I have to, or thinking that, well, there's an opportunity, then I should take it. It was never about like, how do I feel about something? When I started asking that question, literally, I started to ask myself that every single day at many moments in my day. Like, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about my morning routine? How do I feel about my, like, what I'm spending most of my day doing? It changes literally your life. Like, it's how you can build a life that aligns with you. If you don't know how you feel, you don't understand your feelings, you don't know yourself. So, and I was a big victim to that. I was somebody that, like, I could not buy myself any clothes. I could never make a decision on what I wanted, whether it was food or what I wanted to wear, or I never understood what I wanted. And this is so common in women, especially. I see it so often. Like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like. It's because we never think about our own feelings. We always think, well, like, what should I do, or what do I have to do? Anyway, what do you think? Let's get Gino's input.
You done? You want to say some more? No, I'm saying I feel like you were getting pretty deep there. One of the things that I've learned, even throughout my own life, but just through the observation of other people, is they go through life without ever asking themselves that question. Why are you doing anything? Why is that even important to you? Like you're choosing to do these things in life, but why is that important? What does that give you exactly? So I think what she's really trying to say is you need to expand your self-awareness. You need to expand the idea of who you believe yourself to be, right? And there was 3 questions that I like to ask myself frequently, and I tell clients the same ones. It's like, who are you? Who do you think you are? And who are you really, right? And I think all of these are wrapped around the premise of asking yourself the question, why, because if you don't understand yourself, by asking yourself why each of these things matter to you, well, then you start to position yourself into wrong situations. You get yourself into wrong environments. You put yourself around the wrong people. You get yourself into the wrong jobs. So you really got to ask yourself, why are you doing anything in life? And if your reason is money, then that reason isn't a very strong one. Because money comes and goes, but like if you get yourself into something that's not really truly connected with yourself, because you've never truly asked yourself why you want to do it, well, then you're going to put yourself in harm's way. And you're going to limit yourself in life. And this is what a midlife crisis is people never going through life asking themselves why. Why am I doing any of this stuff? Because I was told to? Because this is what my options are? Because this is what I know? Why are you doing any of this? So just continue to ask yourself that question throughout your life, because if you keep asking it throughout your life, you'll come up with different answers. And each time you answer that question for yourself, or even ask yourself that question, you expand your sense of self-awareness. And it's very advantageous. It's like one of the best things that you can do for yourself is just to ask yourself the question why.
Yeah. Yeah, life changing. Like I said, all of these have been absolutely life changing. So that's why I'm making this video. Last one. This is a very big point, and it kind of, all these points, as you can tell, they all kind of relate to each other. It's a lot around like self-awareness, education, and like just expanding your mind. And I think that's like the biggest thing you need to do in your 20s, because like 20s are so weird. It's kind of just like, they're kind of gross. I had a very hard time in my 20s, because it's like you're coming out of this system that you were in for years, for 2 decades you were in a system. And then you graduate college and you come out of this system, and now you're like, well, now what the fuck? Now what do I do? It's like for the first time, you don't have your parents to tell you what to do. Hopefully they're not telling you what to do, or you're not listening to it. And you don't have the school system. You don't have like really any restrictions, and you're out in the real world, and you're like, well, what the fuck do I do now? Because it's so different from like anything you've ever experienced. And I think the only way to come out of that, like, in my opinion, successful, is to just expand your mind and your reality and figure out who you are. So then you can spend your 30s, 40s, 50s building something or doing something that you truly want to do with your life. Otherwise, you're just going to be a slave to, I don't know, some corporate fucking job, like so many people are. Anyway, last point. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think so. Like, you don't have to have all your shit figured out. I think that's a big misconception, because we see 19-year-old millionaires today because of social media, and it's like, you don't need to have all your shit figured out. Some people hit strokes of luck in life. Some people's parents have positioned them to be in entrepreneurial schools from the time they were 8 years old. You don't know what someone's circumstances are. You don't know what someone's life's like. So don't compare yourself to other people. Like, where you're at is where you're at. Deal with the cards that you have. But like she was saying, like, expand your sense of reality. Like in your 20s, you're meant to figure out who you are, because that's what's going to really set you up for all the decisions you make for the rest of your life. Right? Because otherwise, like, if you think that like you need to have all your shit figured out in your 20s and you live another 60 years, well, you're going to change over time, right? So you better get a good idea as to exactly what it is that your value system is, like what's actually important to you, because the terrain, the social environment, friends, jobs, all those things can change over time. But if you don't get an idea of who you really are at your core, well, then it's going to affect you the rest of your life. So you spend your 20s like just learning about yourself. Figure out what drives you, what motivates you. Figure out what you hate. Figure out what to avoid. And just spend your 20s learning who you are. Get acquainted with yourself and foster a good relationship with yourself. That's a big one too.
Okay, my last point that I want to talk about is understanding, like, the point number 5 is understanding sales and marketing. And why is this so important? It doesn't matter if you want to be an entrepreneur or if you don't, okay? I think that understanding sales and marketing is actually a way you can protect yourself against people that are literally out there to fucking get you. Like, they are. There's people out there to fucking get you, and they don't give a shit. Like, maybe they're not thinking about you specifically, but they're out there to take and to manipulate. So understanding sales and marketing will help you not only protect yourself, but also eventually down the line, if that's something that you want, it can help you build something that you make money from something that you care about, which is my mission. And I'm not done with it, but I know that that's where it started. Another thing is, it'll help you understand like your job from a bigger picture. Like, something that's so important we don't realize when we start to work for somebody else, and people that struggle so much with their careers and their jobs, and it's because they don't realize that everything is a business. When you work for somebody else, you don't understand that they're running a business, so you never understand their point of view. Maybe it's hard for you to get hired. Maybe it's hard for you to like excel at your work. If you understand these basic principles of like how a business works, you can position yourself in a much better way, whether it's making a business or working inside of one or not being manipulated by one. Does that make sense? You have something to say?
Yeah, I would say, look, there's a part of your brain called your limbic brain. Okay, your limbic brain. The purpose of it is for emotions and decision making. And what they teach you in sales and marketing is to manipulate that part of someone's brain so they end up making a decision, right? So they teach you strategies and tactics to manipulate people, right? And I'm not saying this is the case with every single company. I mean, not everybody has bad intentions, but it is the case for a large and vast majority of them because they're trying to make you purchase their stuff. Because what's the main motive in the US in capitalism? It's profit motive, right? Like they care about how much money they make. It's how they gauge the success of a business and the lifelong span of a business. So you as a consumer, if you don't understand these concepts, then you're going to constantly be the source of their manipulation. You're going to constantly wonder why it is you keep getting yourself into fucking pits financially, or why you keep buying shit that you don't need and you eventually throw out or you don't use anymore. You know, or why you even position yourself into certain places because you've been sold the idea that this job is good for you even, right? So if you don't understand marketing and sales, you don't understand brainwashing because this is essentially what the premise of what these people are doing, right? It's the idea that you can manipulate someone's mind into making a choice. And when you arm yourself against that information, it'll make you more informed. And even if you don't want to be a business owner, like she was saying, it'll help you understand that you are working for a business. And it puts you into the idea and the perspective of what the business owner that you work for is thinking of. And you could change your value to that business owner, maybe by increasing your pay or even getting the job in the first place by helping them understand that you're there to help the business thrive. And you can do that by understanding business, marketing, and sales. Also, sales is a frame of mind, right? Grant Cardone's a big one. I used to train a lot of his team, right? If you know who Grant Cardone is. And his whole big saying was sell or be sold, because you're either selling, which means you're either selling yourself, or people are selling to you, which is they're selling you ideas, right? They're changing the way that you see yourself. Social media in itself is marketing, right? Like the whole idea that people are pushing off images to you and propaganda and they're curating lifestyles and they're making you believe that you're behind in life is all part of the game. You know, so you need to learn to arm yourself against that as a resistance, right? To strengthen your mind against it. Otherwise, it's going to be easily manipulated and cause you to have anxiety and depression.
Yeah, 100%. It's a lot more than just like when you think about a business, like I don't know, a fucking like Whole Foods, or like I don't know, a car, that somebody that sells cars. It's a lot bigger than that. It's any idea you can think of in the world can be marketed to you. It's from a political standpoint, from watching movies standpoint, from like what shows are on Netflix, like anything you can think of, anything you see on social media. Like that was one of the biggest reasons why I started this channel, because I was so sick of just seeing like fake shit on Instagram or even YouTube, and people like curating this image that are selling to you all the time, that is like that's trying to say that this is what happiness is, and it's all materialistic. And I really like wanted to combat that and just show like a real life. I'm like, we're real people living real lives. Nobody fucking lives like that. So that was one of the reasons I started this YouTube channel. But in general, like I think that's so important to learn. Do you have something to say?
A big thing with marketing too is, you know, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know, once you see it and once you understand it, you'll start to see it in everything that you do. And that really changes the way that you feel about things, right? You could tell when people are trying to manipulate you or trying to push you to buy things by creating urgency and scarcity and fear and driving on your emotions, right? So once you see it, you can't unsee it. So it's very important to arm yourself against this information. There was one other thing that I was going to say. Losing train of thought. It was very important too.
It's fine. We'll make more videos.
Once you see, you can't unsee it. I'm gonna remember it the second we stop filming. It's gonna piss me off too.
That's fine. Give me
Shit.
it. Okay. Anyway, these are the 5 lessons that I learned in my 20s that changed my life. 1.
I remember what it is.
Seriously?
Yes. One quick thing, okay? In marketing, they also teach you this. People don't want to you don't want to help somebody understand. You want someone to feel understood. So they're leveraging on your negative emotions, your feelings of depression, fear, anxiety, your moments of insecurity. It's like once they know that they help you feel understood, they know that they got you as a customer for life, right? So I know this section has been a lot. We've probably been talking about this for like 5 minutes or so, but it's so important that you understand this stuff because people will manipulate you emotionally if you don't understand it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna wrap this up. I don't want this video to be super long, but the 5 very important life-changing lessons that I learned in my 20s are: don't listen to your friends, don't listen to your parents, educate yourself, don't stop educating yourself after you graduate college, read books. What was number 4? Oh, question. Question your thoughts and your feelings. Ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Do I like this? How do I feel about this? And then number 5 is learn about marketing and sales and arm yourself with understanding the bigger picture.
One other thing.
All right, friends, Gino and I are gonna go on an afternoon walk, well, night. It's almost dark out, it's like 7:15. I don't plan on taking my phone, so I'm gonna have to end the vlog here. We leave all of our electronics at home and just kind of like take some time to ourselves, which I'm really looking forward to. What are you complaining about? He looks so tiny because we shaved them.
Go outside?
I already let him out.
When?
I just let him out like 5 minutes
Did
ago.
you see the look in Hilla's face when I said that? You want to go outside? Look at his eyes. See him?
Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next vlog.